somebody told me my plan wasn't very good. So, we, raise your hand if you know. So Carrie from planning is gonna be here today. And of course, we have to put a financial spin on everything. So Carrie's going to talk to us about savings for septics and the environment. And if you ask a question, speak up because we are being recorded today. And last month they couldn't hear the game answers, so anyway. So I'm gonna turn it over to Carrie. And please ask questions, there might be housing bucks in it.
So I'm Carrie from planning. Thanks, Liz.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And I'm the water quality specialist for the tribe. And so I know this is a great lunch topic. You know, we're going to talk about septic systems and how that can impact your water quality and food sources. So one of the things that we do is we put out, I don't know if anybody recognizes this, but we send this around to several area agencies. It's the results from what we do when we go out into the field and study water quality. And we study several points along the Chippewa River, and then we also look at individual systems on a 5-year rotation. So we look at the Salt River, we look at the North Branch of the Chippewa River, the Coldwater River, and then also the Saginaw River. And then we look really closely at the Chippewa River 1 year too. So these are sites that we do every single year. And this is to just make people aware that our E. coli levels are up. And so you see on here that there's the red lines, and those are standards that the state of Michigan put into place that we don't want to see the levels go above. This blue line right here is Chippewa Waters Park down right on High Street, and you can see that it's very, very elevated. We check these once a week, and we have one that is a monthly average that we don't want to go above, and then we have one that is a weekly or daily average that we don't want to go above. And each site we take 3 samples and we take the average of that. So I can put a couple of these right up front here so you can take a look at those. We do send these to the Central Michigan District Health Department. We send them to State of Michigan. We send them to EPA. We send them to our Public Relations Department. Just all kinds of people all over the place. So this has become, I don't know if anybody's seen it in the paper that, you know, there's been articles written about the E. coli levels and why is this happening and what can we do about it.
Didn't they close the Bay City State Park because of that?
They do, yeah.
Over July 4th.
Yeah. And the reason that we have these issues are things like septic tanks that aren't working. We have things like, you know, manure applications on farm fields are a huge thing, and if it's done right before the rain and then it rains, it sends all of that running off and right into our surface water, and so that will elevate it. And so a lot of times when we have these really, really high numbers, it's right after a rain event. And so we're not sure. We're not sure whether, basically E. coli is, it tells us if there are pathogens that live in the gut of animals in our surface water. This is when it gets really fun for a topic for lunch, by the way.
So if they're really high, how dangerous can that be to us as humans?
Basically, it's just an indicator for us to know that there's a lot of bacteria right there from either human or animal waste that is living. It's not necessarily a really bad strain of E. coli.
Okay.
It's just what we use to measure to see what kind of pathogens we have in the water and how high those levels are. So we can't really tell you, is it super dangerous, is it not, is it a bad strain? We don't know, we just know that there is either animal waste or human waste right at that location coming from somewhere, and that the levels are elevated. So whenever you have high levels of bacteria, you have the risk of infection, you know, so you definitely don't want to drink the water. You definitely, if you have sores, cuts, anything like that, weak immune system, probably not a good idea to go in. And so, you know, if you're going tubing with a family member or something, probably don't wanna take them, because the bacteria levels are just high enough to cause problems. So, and our water runs downhill, so our water runs, through the reservation here, and then also, empties into the Tittabawassee River in Midland, and then that empties out into the Saginaw River, which empties out into Saginaw Bay. So what we're doing here, and how we're impacting water quality here, impacts Saginaw Bay and Lake Huron. And Lake Huron and Lake Erie have already been reported as having really high levels of algae this year. And last year in Lake Erie, it shut down the city of Toledo's drinking water for 2 days. They couldn't even bathe in it because the toxicity was so high from the algae, from what the algae was producing. So we've got problems, and it starts up here. It starts uphill, on top of the hill, because it runs down. So what we're doing to address those things, and this is where it becomes financial. I'm gonna tie it in, I promise. Yes.
But how long does it take to then, when you find it, to clear it?
Well, what we used to do is if we found an elevated level, we would go back and go back and go back until we got lower levels. But now what we're finding is that once it goes above the water quality standard, it typically stays there throughout the summer.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah. So, it seems that every year it's going up, and so we're really trying to figure out how can we deal with this. And there's one thing, there's two, I was talking about whether it's human waste or animal waste, and we think, we've got to narrow this down. We have a lot of agriculture going on in the area, which for many, many years we've been pointing the finger at ag and saying, it's the manure applications. Well, I personally think that professionally think that it is a combination of both. So what we've done is we got extra funding from the EPA to do a little research on where we think it's coming from, and we get to pull in these dogs. They're canines, yeah,
Let me guess, they're sniffing for.
human waste.
Oh,
So instead of being drug dogs, yeah. So instead of being drug dogs, they're trained the exact same way, but they're trained to sniff out things like fabric softeners and human waste. And they'll alert if it's present. So we just did that and we got our results back. We went out and we grabbed samples, we shipped them to the dogs. The dogs alerted on 7 out of 22 sites positive for human waste. And that's along the north branch of the Chippewa River. So now, in August, we're bringing the dogs back, and we're gonna walk the dogs with the drain commissioner and EPA and the DEQ and the health department so that we, so if anybody comes up and says, hey, what are you doing on my property? We can go, it's their fault, and walk away. It's kind of our safety to make sure that we have access that we're allowed on the property. So we're gonna take the dogs up, they're gonna sniff any outlets that we find so that we can pinpoint the places where this discharge is coming from.
Could be coming from the homes themselves, their systems set up from.
That's what we think, and so, what we have right now is that tribal members can go down to planning and sign up for a program where you can have your septic tank pumped and inspected to find out if it's okay. If it's not okay, then Indian Health Services will help to find money to be able to fix and replace those septic systems. So it's a really good program, and it can help us to prevent this kind of situation and eliminate those discharges into surface water. Because a lot of people don't know how to maintain their systems. They don't know what to do if they have something broken. You don't really know if you have something broken unless it's coming into your house. Right now, we have this contract with the health department who's going out and doing these inspections. And he's finding that 10% of these systems are gone. They're not working. So he said, in certain situations, there's sewage that's all the way up to the house, just on the surface of the water, and people think that they just have a wet yard. And they don't realize that it's, human sewage. So it's pretty easy to have that kind of a mistake if you're not thinking about it. I work in water all the time, so if I see something like that, I know automatically what it is. But somebody who's, working in a bank isn't necessarily gonna put 2 and 2 together. So, yeah.
So what's some of the signs that we should look for this kind of problem?
If you have something backing up into your house, that would be an issue. If you have wet spots coming up in your lawn that haven't been there before. Suds. I heard somebody reporting suds the other day, where you do laundry and all of a sudden you have just a little pocket of suds somewhere on your lawn. I've seen suds rolling down the road from somebody's yard because detergents and stuff started up. So anything like that, yes.
We had a neighbor, pretty much all of us in that area, we all have septic tanks. It was further down at the end of the court where we lived. And some black stuff was coming out from the ground. And quite close by where the septic was. And the kid came running down our street, to let our kids know, we struck oil. They said. And it was black, black stuff,
yeah.
that was all, was all waste, from their septic. They had it tested and everything, and it was just waste from the septic.
Yeah.
And right away, they had to call the, health department, to come out and take a look and,
Yep.
yeah.
I wanted, at my other place on the river, the septic field was right on the edge of the hill, where it ended, and then it was like another foot or two. Well, all of a sudden, I started seeing water, whatever, and I'm like, oh, Lord. Just a FYI, if anybody's got something like this, I had to raise my mower, so it wasn't coming down too far, because what it was doing was scalping the field.
Oh, wow.
Just, just a FYI to people.
Yeah.
Well, and then too, if you had a newer home, cause we had an issue, where all of a sudden stuff was coming back in the house. And it had been inspected and everything by the health department, but when we had to have the people come back out, they had put our tank in backwards. They had, where it was supposed to be going out was higher than where it was coming in, so it was letting it come back in the house. So if you have a newer house, watch out for that.
Yeah. So we're doing all kinds of things to try and track down these E. coli issues, but the number one thing that you can do as a homeowner is to make sure that your septic tank is maintained and inspected.
I would just say, I used to work for the health department, not here in town, but if you're thinking about buying a home that's on well and septic, it is well worth the money to have the health department or a licensed, professional in water, septic, well, inspector come out, and get your tank pumped and a pump card from the septic tank pumper, to verify that it's in good condition and the baffles are still in place. It probably is about $300, but to replace a septic system is not cheap. If it's just in sand, you might be able to get away with it for about $5,000, but those raised bed ones with the alarm systems and everything, they're about $15,000 to $25,000. So, same deal for your well. So those are two inspections that, I know the banks used to require those for FHA and VA loans, but I don't know that they still do that, but definitely worth the money to get it done.
And other loans, I mean, it's not required when you buy a house, it's not required that you have those inspections.
And your regular home inspector doesn't necessarily look at those.
A good one now, yeah.
Yeah,
How often do you share your septic pump?
every 2 years,
Every 2 years?
Really?
yeah. Yes.
Is that even with putting the, I know at the grocery store or at the hardware, you can buy, a substance to put down and you flush into the toilet to keep the.
Redax?
Yeah,
Redax.
even with that, you have to do it every 2 years?
Sally, you wanna?
Actually, the Redax is not good for your septic system because what it does is it has enzymes and critters in it that actually break down the solids that will sink to the bottom of your tank. And because they're lighter, they'll get in the effluent, the gray water that goes out into your field. And it'll clog up your field because it's so tiny, it'll mat on your drainage holes. So it's actually better to just leave it alone and have it pumped regularly.
Well, I had some older landlords when I first got married and stuff, and she said what she did, and they never had a problem with their septic, is put a yeast cake down their thing once a month.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay, but everything that's in your human waste is what's needed for the bugs in your septic tank, that's what they want.
But then if you use harsh chemicals, like in your cleaning agents and
Kills.
bleach in your water, you know, for laundry or anything like that, it's gonna kill your septic.
And
It's
if you
gonna
run
kill
your
all your
softener
microbes.
I'm sorry, if you run your softener discharge into your septic tank too, some people do that, instead of having a little, you know, dry well with a pail of rocks or whatever, the salt is too briny, so that kills the bacteria in your tank as well.
So, yeah, a lot of it's about that balance of that ecosystem that's right there in your septic too.
So how do you put a yeast cake in it?
Flush it down the toilet, break it up and flush it down the toilet.
So yeah,
And
septic.
they used to have us do that too at the house that we rented from them.
Mhm.
It was an old farmhouse and.
And they said to do that.
So all of this, you know, it's, with the E. coli, the bacteria in the river, we're all tracing it back into how we use the land and how we manage waste. So, to help you save money, to turn it back into a financial situation, it's about maintaining those systems so that it doesn't cost you $30,000 in the end, and it's just a couple hundred every couple of years. And then also, it helps us to save the river so that we're not spending a large amount in taxpayer dollars to fix these situations in the future.
So we don't need to go to outhouses yet, huh?
Not yet. Wait until next year, I'll update.
I have a question.
Yes.
How long is the lifetime of usually a septic system?
I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that. Sally, do you know? What's the
Cheryl
life?
was talking to me.
Sorry. Cheryl.
It was important
Oh,
stuff that I asked though.
Life of a septic, typically.
Depends on how many people are in the house.
And how much toilet paper do you use?
Right, how many people, anywhere from, I'd say 15 years is pretty lifetime.
15?
Yeah,
Wow.
Man, I got 35 out of my other house. It's still going.
35. Your septic tank will last a long time, it's your drain field, are you sure you have one?
That was the place on the river.
Right.
There you go.
We know where it was going.
I sold it,
Yeah.
Sally.
Well, there's your E. coli answer.
Right.
Thank you, Mary.
But the people across the river from me, I could tell every time they did laundry, because there was
Uh-huh.
bubbles floating down
Yeah.
the river. They dumped their dishwasher and their washer.
I think a lot of people don't even realize it.
Yeah.
And then because it's so expensive to replace it, you know, who has $10,000 to $30,000 sitting in their back pocket? Because I know I don't. To
How
replace
these
the
people
system.
did, they're just cheap.
Yeah, yeah. So it's one of those where we're also looking for programs and grants and opportunities because we understand that, you know, socially disadvantaged are going to have these issues too. And a lot of these older places that were built prior to 1950s are actually tiled right into field tile for farming operations and shoot straight out to the drain, and they don't even know that's the situation. And they can't afford to put a system in. So we're looking for grants to be able to do that and provide some cost share for landowners to be able to have septic systems. Any more questions? And yes.
I live surrounded by farm fields and farm fields in a triangle of 3 dairy farms. And
Enough said.
your well water,
Mhm.
does it go deep enough to kind of negate the effects of all the junk that's put on the field around me?
Let's hope so.
From what I understand, it's very deep because we have really thick clay or something, and they had to go really far down to
Okay.
find water.
How recently was your house built?
40 years ago.
Okay. Because that has a lot to do with it, and if
Yeah.
you had a well and septic permit, or if it was just a driven well.
I know the well's newer. I mean, we've lived there 10 years, but
Okay, and you can always take a sample to the health department and have them test it for things like nitrates
Okay.
and bacteria.
now if you run your well water through filters and, you know, your refrigerator and the pitchers and all that, does that help at all?
It does, it helps to get some of that residue out,
Okay.
but at the same time, it's not gonna kill bacteria.
No.
If you've got bacteria in your system, it's not gonna.
And you still brush your teeth with that tap water.
Yeah.
Great.
But tap water and water in municipal systems and stuff is more highly regulated than any bottled water. So.
So we're all drinking bottled water.
Yeah.
I like my tap water in Mount Pleasant.
I do too.
I like my tap city water in Midland.
But it's not supposed to be good for you, right?
No, tap water is better than bottled water. I mean, they look at it closer because it's ingested, it's a consumable, where this is, like, one is the Food and Drug Administration, and one is continuously sampled on a daily basis by our water plants. So I would rather have it come from someplace that is a constant, continual sampling versus somebody who's inspected every.
So is well water better for you or
Tap water.
tap
Or
water?
city water.
I
City
think
water?
it's dependent. It's dependent on where you're at.
Cause like I don't like the
whether-
taste of well water, I hate it.
It's really, taste is also dependent on what kind of rock formation you're in, you know,
You would like mine
what
on
kind
the
of
river.
mineral.
I hated ours at the cottage, ew.
I had my water tested by a company, up in, I think he's in Clare, and he puts in water systems. I live in Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant water is very contaminated. It tested way above government standards on a lot of things. And so I put in a reverse osmosis system because of that. But he looked at me and he said, this water's dangerous to drink, I just want you to know. And I know another lady, actually I have two other friends, because I go to school at the naturopathic school, and they had their water tested, and they live in the city of Mount Pleasant, and the same thing, in different parts of the city, their water also tested very contaminated, just so you
So
know.
Mount Pleasant, everybody doesn't have the same water?
There's 2 water systems in Mount Pleasant.
One on each
But-
side of town.
What about the tribe? Where did they get their water from?
It's a groundwater system, and it's a water plant.
Yeah, the water plant's just right over there.
Yeah, so then our water
Magic.
is different than Mount Pleasant?
Yes.
Okay, so we're not getting the same water as Mount Pleasant.
No.
Good. Now I can sleep.
I don't know, I like my water and I'm still doing fine.
And
It's
also,
just the,
if you're a tribal member
wildlife,
and you have well water,
what do
you
you call
can
it,
take
water
your
system
samples
that's,
up to the water.
where wildlife kind of gathers.
Do you have to live on the res?
Yeah.
On
Or is
each
this
side.
for one?
No, the other name for it. It's a wildlife where water's supposed to be
If you
filtered.
bring it in, they can't.
Right.
Yeah, where water, naturally filtered water. Yeah.
Like a wetland? or-
Wetland, yeah.
If I know a tribal member,
This used to be all wetlands here. And we have gatherers up in the house
And I'm on camera saying
They
that.
know that used to be their gathering, area, and especially over there by the incineration program. I've seen ducks kind of swooping in, in that area, to gather. And so we kind of destroyed the water table, in this area, especially the times of water. So it's not the quality of water that the way it should be.
No, it isn't.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Talking about the quality of water comparatively, from what it was decades ago
Yeah.
to now. And I went to, like an educational, the health departments all came together and did an outreach and education situation, and there was a professor there who had done studies on groundwaters across the United States and did not find one location for groundwater source that did not have acetaminophen, which is Tylenol in it, which says that everything is, because it's all a cycle, and everything's going back in, that our medications and our personal care products and everything are starting to have an impact on our drinking water too.
We should be pain-free.
We should. Right. But that, relates to just the fact that we have leveled our wetlands, we've filled them in, those are our groundwater recharge areas, our filtration, our natural filtration, and we've done away with them. So we don't have the opportunity to recharge our groundwater or to filter the bad stuff out, plus the overuse of personal care products and medications. And people are just becoming aware of this, so it's a situation. Any more questions, statements? All right. I'm gonna-
Thank you.
I'll leave these up here and feel free to take them. Thanks.
That's all you got?
That's all I got.
You guys don't have no more questions for her? I have a spatula in my hand.
I know.
But it's been somebody, they don't ask her a question.
Sorry, Anna, it was, you want her to repeat?
She's on tape, right?
Do you have, huh?
Paper?
Yes, she's being recorded, yeah.